Hello, my friends, and welcome back to a long-awaited, long-belated episode of the Meerkat Musings podcast with your host, Ben, aka Daft Timon. Firstly, I must offer my humble apologies for not having done one of these videos again sooner. Technological issues have scuppered my opportunity to do this for over a month, really. So I am glad I'm now in a position to return to doing a few more videos and to once again be a multi-channel Meerkat, because after all, that's how you get your brand across these days, isn't it? You use different channels, and I do happen to use quite a few different channels these days. You will find me via Instagram as Darth_Timon. You'll find me on Twitter, which is as Ben Berwick GB, which is BenBerwickGB, and you will find me and a few other places as well. But I'm not going to list them all off because, frankly, I think they would get boring fairly quickly. I'm not going to do my first video of 2024 all about my social media links. But I am going to start with the beginning of the year. We're going to rewind back to January and to what was at times a month where it felt bitterly cold. But it must be said that it was also a month where the weather did seem to get quite mild at various points. And temperature was touching 13, 14 degrees, which is not what you necessarily associate with winter, and certainly not with January. In fact, in some parts of the world, in some parts of the winter world, as it were, we're getting even warmer. In parts of Spain, the temperature hit 30 degrees. Now, that's summertime weather. In the UK, we bask in that. It's glorious. It's shirts off, it's swimming shorts on, it's in the paddling pool sort of thing. You don't expect that in January in Europe, but we actually had that. And this is where I have to kind of think to all those people who say that climate change is a hoax and all that kind of thing. And I think, well, when was the last time you can remember anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere hitting 30 degrees in January? Particularly in Europe, it's pretty much unheard of. And, the odds are that we're going to get more of that. So, maybe there is some truth to climate change. I think there definitely is some truth to climate change. So, we had a bit of fun, of course, with that, as it were. Well, I didn't, because I'm in the UK, so I had some mild patches in January, but I didn't get to enjoy the 30-degree sunshine. Oh well. The year actually began with a trip to the local pantomime, which was Cinderella, which was typically hilarious, as pantomimes usually are. And of course, on a few occasions, things went a bit wrong, and some of the cast, lost their nerve and started to giggle. But you know what? That's part of the fun of a panto. It's not supposed to run completely smoothly. You're supposed to have a laugh. Pantomimes are supposed to be outrageous fun for the entire family. And this one certainly was. And from there, really, it was just a question of getting through work, which has proven to be challenging for a number of reasons. Without going into too much detail, there was a colleague of mine who has been off long-term sick, and there's been a few issues. There was one occasion where I had to loan trade, which, to be fair, I don't actually mind. The key to loan trading is to make sure you bring lunch with you, because otherwise you are stuffed. Well, in fact, you're not stuffed. You're not going to eat anything. So the opposite of stuffed, you're going to starve for a day, which ain't particularly fun. So that's the only thing about loan trading that I tend to think of, is making sure I'm well stocked with food for the day. But, as I say, I don't mind it. Some people, I think, really, really don't like the idea. And to be fair, the company doesn't like the idea because of health and safety reasons, which is absolutely fair enough. But in certain circumstances, it proves to be unavoidable. And as I say, I don't actually personally mind it whatsoever. I don't want to do it all the time, but it's not actually too bad every now and then. You just have to, grin and bear it a little bit and get on with things, and that's exactly what I did. The situation with work is one that is ongoing in terms of the stressful elements to it. But I did hit my sales target in January, which is quite nice. Got the year off to a very good start. And February's been a bit of a slower month so far for me. A few things on the boil with bathroom projects. Just got to see how they pan out. There's still plenty of time, of course, in the month. It's about half a month to go. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. February brought a meal out with work to a local-ish Thai restaurant, which always does very, very good food. And it also brought a family gathering. As a matter of fact, that was quite recent. That was actually the weekend just gone, which was quite nice. Quite nice to see some of my cousins and uncles and relatives from my mum's side of the family. We went through a spell, I went through a spell of not really being able to go to quite a few family do's for one reason or another, largely because of where I was working. So it was nice to kind of be able to do more of that in recent times. And in recent times, I've actually seen quite a lot of my extended family quite often, not always for the best of reasons. It was around about this time last year that one of my aunts passed away. But, nonetheless, I have had an opportunity to see more of my family, which is always nice. I come from quite a big family, as it were. I have quite a few cousins, and we're quite. I'd like to say we're quite close, and I'm used to big family gatherings. My wife, not so much. My daughter takes after my wife in that regard. So I know it's not always the most fun and enjoyable experience for them. But they do, for my benefit, persevere with a lot of these gatherings, for which I am grateful. I do appreciate where they are, where they're coming from with that. But that brings me to one of the main events, shall we say, of the last kind of few weeks. And it's actually an event which at the time of this video is still unfolding. So we had this family do. We came home on the Sunday, and then Sunday night, my daughter was sick, and then she was sick again, and then she was sick again and again and again, every few minutes it seemed. Barely slept whatsoever over the course of Sunday night. I had to go to work the following day. My daughter, understandably, was not at school, and my wife took her up to the doctors, who then suggested that she actually goes to A&E, and at the time of recording this video, they're at A&E, and so I am absolutely shattered. I am a bit worried about my daughter, of course I am. My wife said not to go up to A&E as well because it's very, very busy, there's no point. And to be fair, it's not like it's, desperate crisis or anything like that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this video right now, I'd be there. It's more a case of just making sure that you get some hydration, because when you're sick a lot, you become very dehydrated. The chief issue, I think, is it might be gastronitis or something like that. And that usually passes within anywhere from a day to 3 days. But whilst you have it, you need to avoid certain foods like cheese and other dairy products and that kind of thing. And my daughter happens to love cheese, so she will not be a particularly happy bunny come the conclusion of all this. I think the idea was at A&E, the plan was to put her on a drip to get her some fluids. But, of course, typical of A&E is you might be there a while because, these places do not tend to act very quickly. That is a sign of 14 years of neglect by the Tories, which is not a topic I'm going to get into in too much detail in this video. But I am going, however, to move into political territory. And in particular, I'm going to be talking about King Charles. Now, you may be aware that the King was recently diagnosed with cancer. I would not wish cancer upon my worst enemy. I absolutely, really would not. However, there's this outpouring of sympathy for King Charles, and I do understand that. I think being diagnosed with cancer at any age, from any walk of life, must be a terrifying experience. However, there would have been many people diagnosed with cancer on the same day the King got his diagnosis. How many of them, by virtue of nothing more than the family that they were born into, are going to receive instant treatment from the very best medical care that the country can provide, that perhaps the world can provide? The answer is only one person is going to get that. And it just seems to be a sign of how grossly unbalanced society is. If you have money somehow that makes you virtuous enough to receive instant medical care because you were born into it, you'll have to forgive me if I don't find that to be a particularly great philosophy. The other side of the pond has seen its own political, shall we say, fireworks of late. There was talk about Donald Trump being able to be immune from prosecution for actions that he carried out whilst president. And of course, to me, that sets a slightly dangerous precedent, doesn't it? And imagine for a second if the president carries out all kinds of legal dodgy deals and actions and once out of office remains untouchable for them. How far does that extend? And that's, that expectation simply sounds like someone who is thoroughly aware that they've done things they know they shouldn't have done, things which are illegal, and is determined to ensure they get away with it. It's one step away from the ideas and policies of a wannabe tyrant, which I honestly think Trump, would love to be. He does not particularly respect democracy, as we have seen through the way in which he riled up his supporters into insurrection. And he has also recently turned around and said that countries that do not pay their share of their NATO commitments should suffer the consequences, in effect. He's more or less given the green light to someone like Putin to say, look, if this country doesn't meet their financial commitments, feel free to invade them. We won't help them, even though NATO is an international treaty about mutual defence. It makes a mockery of that policy. Can you imagine in World War II and in the prelude to World War II, if countries sat on the sidelines because of money and let Hitler roll over Europe and much of the rest of the world, all because of money? How horrific would that be? Can you imagine that being the message from the United States at the time? Turning around and saying, oh, well, if you want to invade, we won't stop you because that country hasn't given us enough money. Is that how you want to settle international disputes? Is that the kind of policies we want for the future? I, for one, don't want that. We don't need to, further enable people like Putin. That's a terrible, terrible idea. But, that is Donald Trump 101, of course. And it continues to absolutely shock me that people are still so absolutely enamoured with him, and that they think that he is a good, competent leader. His record as a president wasn't great, not by a long shot, but people still seem to believe that every single misstep that he's alleged to have done is all part of a conspiracy against him. They are committed to the idea that any media source that criticises Trump is part of a deep state conspiracy. And unfortunately, it's very difficult to shake people out of that kind of mindset. people will often believe the big lie, as it were. They find it easier than the truth in some instances. But that is the nature of society these days, isn't it? We're heavily polarised, and you have to wonder if the powers that be are doing that deliberately sometimes. We are, I think, often nowadays very much in the grips of a partisan society. It's, right versus left, it's all that kind of stuff, and it's just after a while, it's just tiring. But there needs to be, I think, genuine moves away from the kind of hard right populism that we've seen in recent times. I mean, we've seen it with the Tories for a very long time, and the country's on its knees because of them. And it amazes me, it horrifies me that there are still so many people that would vote Tory. Something like, a lot of polls still put the Tory percentage of the vote at around about, 25%. Now, don't get me wrong, Labour are predicted to get about 43 to 46%, depending upon who you believe. But nonetheless, the fact that a quarter of voters would still vote Tory after 14 years of shambolic governance, the only reasoning behind that I can think of is because people still buy into the media narrative of certain hard right publications like GB News, like the Sun newspaper, which are just, it's all just sensationalist crap. But unfortunately, people buy into that, and they draw comfort from it, perhaps, as well. And it just enables the Tories to be what they are. And the Tories believe the hype that comes out of these papers and out of these media outlets as well. I think they genuinely believe it. It would be better just to have a cold beer with family, like I did the other day, and just chill out and relax a little bit, I think, sometimes, and just to try and forget about politics for a while. And, just try and indulge in other things. One of the things I've been indulging in recent times is Football Manager. But I can't do that right now because my laptop is away for repairs. For some reason, the D key stopped working. Very, very strange. But of course, lots and lots of words in the English language have a D in them. Case in point, the word word. And has a D in it, of course. And so many other words. So it makes, among other things, Football Manager a bit more tricky when you're searching for certain players. And it also has made the process of writing my books more challenging as well. The sequel to The Awakening, for example, how can I write the remainder of that without using the letter D? I don't think that's going to be possible somehow. It would be an interesting challenge, wouldn't it? Write an entire book without using any particular letter. Challenging, to put it mildly, I think. But I'm not going to try and do that anytime soon, I can assure you of that. So we have the fun and games with that. And of course, this has also stalled me putting the final touches to my second ever published book, which is due out on the 29th of February. I'm hoping to get the laptop back soon, and once it's back, I can then complete all my final tweaks and that kind of thing. It's literally just about formatting it now to make sure it looks right as an ebook, and then I can be ready to push the button and launch it out into the ether, as it were. My second book is called Fontana and Istalor, and it is completely different to The Awakening. Different setting, different story, different characters, different everything. This is a fantasy story. It's a story about finding who you are, finding what you're made of, finding out what you can do, even when the chips are down and you think there is absolutely no way out. It's about making friends in the most unlikely of places, and it is about unravelling mysterious family legacies. And there's also, magic mirrors, medieval realms, lots and lots of anthropomorphic people, such as canines, felines, equines and others. And the main character is transformed into a meerkat by the mirror. So make of that what you will. I did wonder what direction to go with this. Would I have this be a kind of family-friendly kind of thing, or would I have this be a little bit more grown-up? And I went in the end for a bit more grown-up. There were a few situations and scenes which definitely a little bit gruesome, I would dare say, quite intense as well. So it's not a family book, it's not a kid's book by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm proud of it. The story kind of bubbled up into my head, and it absolutely would not go away. You know, I couldn't do anything but put this down and type this up and get it out there. And then, you know, it's fair to say it did perhaps hold up a few things in relation to the Awakenings sequel. But equally, to be fair, I had stalled a little bit with that. And one of the things I have found when you're writing, if you do get stuck with something, write something else to try and keep the creative juices going. And if it means you have to write something different for a bit. But I have done that, and I have managed to get the back onto the Awakening sequel as well. I've now done, is it 66,000 words? Might be a little bit less than that. But, you know, nonetheless, I've made some very good progress with that recently. I have a better, clearer idea as to where I want to go with that, as to how I want to kind of build things up to an ending, and I go from there really, of course, with that one. So with a bit of luck, by the end of the year, I'll have that finished and off to the publisher. I have no idea how long the subsequent editing processes will take, but then, you know, hopefully we'll get that done. And I mean, I envision that it would wind up being published next year, but you never know. You never know. I have also immediately started work on a couple of other things, albeit they're in the very, very tentative early stages. My daughter has been pressing me to write a story about a conflict between different types of dragon. You might be familiar, of course, with the classic medieval portrayal of dragons. Think of the dragons in Game of Thrones. Think of Smaug from The Hobbit. They are your very classical medieval dragons. And basically, the idea was to write something about these dragons being in conflict with the serpentine dragons that you often see in Far Eastern culture, in sort of Japanese culture and that kind of thing. So I have been sort of pursuing that notion, but as I say, it's very, very early tentative steps with that so far. And I don't know if I'm gonna carry on with that. I think I will carry on with that. I just don't know the extent to what I'll carry on with that. And I don't know how quickly. I want to do it for my daughter. She's, as I say, she really wants me to do this story. But it's kind of like, I'm trying to get it clear in my head. I mean, at the moment, it's almost taking on a Romeo and Juliet kind of vibe. But whether or not that is how I maintain things, I have no idea. I really don't know if I might just kind of start again and lurch in a different direction. I haven't really decided. I'm going to try and write this because, as I say, it's a project my daughter is very passionate about. And I want to try and do that for her. I did have another idea involving dragons, actually, which was about storytelling. But whether or not I pursue that, I don't know. Then there is my ancient Rome, blood and guts, lots and lots of sex and violence story, which I have often considered rewriting or reworking, but I don't know if I'll get that far anytime soon. So lots of writing projects are on the boil. And through all of that, of course, I still have a day job, and I still have lots and lots of things planned with my wife and daughter. So where any of this goes, I have absolutely no idea. And, there's other things I want to do as well with my time. I don't just want to write. Oh, look, there's Fontana and Istalor. Poor old confused Michael there. He gets really put through the ringer at times. But yeah, there are so many things bubbling away in my head, as there always are in this crazy brain of mine. And, I often don't know where to start. And I can be scatty, I can be very, very stupid at times, as I'm sure my wife would tell you. Sometimes you just have to take one step at a time, don't you? One day at a time as well. And just crack on as best you can with all the various things that you have to do. So, among all of that stuff, of course, there is the hope that my daughter is home soon from hospital and starts to feel better. I hope for work to move in the right direction for everybody and for more money to come from work. I hope for loads more book sales. Of course I do. I'm not particularly sure I'm going to sell loads and loads from that, but you never know. And I just hope that what with all the pain in the world right now, and it's, there is so much of it out there. I just hope that somehow one day human beings perhaps move beyond the tribalism that has landed us into so much conflict and bloodshed. And we can start to realise that there's plenty of room on this rock for all of us. We don't need to squabble over lines on a map. We don't need to squabble over who, worships the right God in the right way. We can let each other be, but whether or not I ever live to see a world like that, I don't know. It's the world I hope my daughter one day gets to see, but I don't know with that, of course, either. What I do know is my cat is, right now as I speak, being both adorable and stupid. So a bit like me, really, in that respect. He's like an extension of myself, but just with 4 legs rather than 2. And with an absolutely determined effort to get behind one of the chairs that we've got. So on that note, I will bid you adieu, and I will have to try and see what my cat has lost under the chair. And I will leave you with that thought of me rustling around behind a chair, trying to retrieve God knows what. Take care of yourselves. Love to you all. I will do another video again really soon.